Yes, hello everyone. It's been a while since we got to talk. It seems like everyone camera is off. I would love to also see some faces as well, so that I don't feel so lonely because I cannot see Van Pen and Sunisa and Sarah. But literally looking forward to also see more faces. I see Hongzi turn on his camera, but I can only see his office. Oh, thank you, Yasen, for turning on. So as time go by, I hope to see more faces. And of course, in our session, we're going to also have group discussions. So worry not, you will have time to talk with your team as well as to also share in the process. And I think before I begin, I like how Pachara usually starts session. It always start with a short impromptu speech that will begin with a prompt in terms of word, quotes, or statement or questions, and you will have 1 minute to just share what it is. So we're going to practice the same thing to actually see whether or not you guys are here in this space and we can begin the learning process. So I think I would like to call one or two of lucky people in this room to actually just provide one quick short presentations, impromptu wise, no preparation needed for 1 minute about things that are related to today's session. So it seems like Sarah has already turned on her camera and she's look excited. So I think the first person I would like to call on is Sarah. Sarah, are you here?
Yeah, sorry. Do you have a question? I didn't catch that. Hi.
Okay, so it's going to be a short impromptu. Hi, hello.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, better?
Yes.
Is it better?
Yeah. I think my
Perfect.
there's a problem with my speaker. Anyway.
Okay, so I think the first prop is quite simple. Literally just a quick statement or quick questions. What is create or lead or initiate project? So Sarah, you have 1 minute to just share your short thought on this.
Can you type in the chat box?
Definitely.
Yeah, I can't.
Hello.
Yeah. Can you type in the chat box? Do you have a what? Why start?
Yep, just sent.
Sorry, I didn't understand. Why startup initiate project? I didn't get the question.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. So I think like usually there's a common misunderstandings of like startup is a project. Startup is usually not a project. Startup is usually an organizations or a businesses that actually deliver a lot of projects in order to hit certain priority or organizational goal. And I think with that, hopefully, I think this session will also not just clarifies the concept of projects and businesses, but also help you guys understand more about why startup or futurepreneur startup like this would benefit from good and impactful projects. So I think maybe we can skip that game for the day, since we actually going to have a lot to talk about and you guys are going to have time to discuss with each other too. So I would like to actually start sharing the slide. And please feel free to pause or actually raise hand if I was if the connection was not clear or I speak too fast. So hopefully feel free to engage during your process. Okay. Can everyone see the screen at the moment?
Yes, I can see.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. I would love to also hear your responses as well because I will feel very lonely if I'm talking alone. And thank you for some of you that actually start turning on camera as well. So as for today's sessions, as Sunisa has already mentioned, going to focus on basic project operations and beyond. and uncover the power of projects for sustainable businesses. With this in mind, the conversation topic that we're going to go through this session to include: one, why do startups need purposeful projects? Two, what is projects and project management 101 to actually help you succeed through this time? Three, what are the secret sauce to manage purposeful projects for your nonprofit and startup? And of course, fourth, let's discuss what's next for your startup. And I think throughout this whole sessions, there will be 2 breakout rooms that will happen. And in each of the breakout rooms, you and your teammate who are actually going to be in your startup team, could they have time to talk with some prop questions. So I think before, without further delay, let's actually start with a simple introductions of startup and projects. Why do startups need good projects? Because I think a lot of people nowadays thinks that when you start a startup, there's the beginning and there's the end. But usually startup is the first stage of businesses and enterprise that's continue on deliver after the end of a project. A project is delivered in a certain period of time in order to help set startup for success or for their future development. Therefore, like when you're actually doing startup, it's very important to have good, not just one, you can actually lead 2 or 3 good projects to actually help your startup move forward. With a show of hand, how many of you bought Startup on Netflix, a Korean K-drama? I know Sunisa is a fan of Startup.
Definitely, I'm also.
Okay. A lot of people are fan. We see Dalin also raised her hand. So a lot of people are fan of Startup. You see, like when in that story, you can actually see that the startup company itself work on certain projects. Usually, it's a business projects to actually help the startup moving forward. You know, you already know the name of the startup itself, but literally they are doing different projects under the startup to actually help build records and also like providing services to actually further improve their startup moving forward, getting funding for scalability. And of course, project is actually very essential to your business strategy. So you can actually think of like you get investment through doing certain projects, or you actually providing certain information or services to certain other company to actually get funding. Because when you are communicating to funders, it's actually very important to actually understand this is the business, my business model, and I'm actually delivering this certain projects, and I would like your investment on this to actually do XYZ. And usually the money from investment are distributed into multiple sectors. One is to project completion, but the other one is for operation costs, which means the salary of your staff, a salary of your the company, and the salary of people working on the project itself. So literally, you need to understand that projects have a strong relationship to your business strategy to ensure the scalability of your startup. So you can think about it like a link and an investment. And usually project can come in multiple form, and it can be marketing and branding. So you're doing marketing, branding online for certain specific time. You deliver products or program for specific group, or you can actually doing projects for special need. I think for startup fan know what's the social projects the main group actually doing, a self-driving going around. But that's not their overall business. Their business is to develop that particular service and products to be put in the market. So this is when you start seeing the differences between startup and projects. And in the process of like early stage of startup, project become essential because people start to know your startup through the impact of the projects that you have made in the community or in the business. So it's very important to actually develop projects that not only help your businesses and startup, but also creating strong impact that actually can lead to branding and other things as well. Okay. If I actually speak too fast, don't forget to raise your hand. I will actually have a quick discussion at the end of the first section. But in that part, you're going to actually have time to talk with your team about all of this as well. So if you actually look at the early stage of startup, I'm assuming most of your team has already talked to your coaches. And this is a model that we actually going to practice throughout the whole process. It is very important to know what stage your startup is in. Is it either in inspirations, problem insight, idea? Are you testing your prototype? Are you developing a full model of your business? Or are you currently looking for scalability? And all of the stage are very essential because project will help you move from stage A to stage B. For example, in this stage, you are currently having problem insight. You already have inspiration. So you conduct a research. You actually lead a research project to know more about your customer, to know more about your customer preference, or to know more about the market need. And then in order for you to actually reach a prototype phase. So in a way, projects that deliver this process will help you to get from point A to point B. And of course, it's actually very important for you to also identify yourself too. So self-reflection as CEO and as staff are essential. So the first stage of every good project is start from clear identification and clarity of the CEO and the team toward which stage your business are in and where do you need to be by a certain period of time. And in our Wisely timeline, you already know that you need to identify which stage your current startup is in this August, and where do you need to be by the first progress update, and where do you need to be by the end of the Wisely Futurepreneur journey. And if you're actually looking for scalability, of course, Sunisa has already brought up very good news about potential funding to actually further expand your project. But literally, you need to actually spend this time to get your startup from one stage to another with strong coaching and support as well as training. So you actually have a lot of resources in a way, like you're lucky to actually have this community to also practice this with you too. But once the Wisely program ends, it's more on the project itself, the startup itself to continue sustaining themselves, right? So moving forward, you need to understand stage A, stage B, and stage C, and afterward, what's gonna be. And you need to understand your startup very clearly. And of course, this would move to our quick discussion before we move on to deeper conversation about projects. So I really need everyone to get into their team and discuss these 3 questions. What is my current startup stage? So identify clearly where your startup or where your team are. Second, where do we need to be by the end of this journey? The end of this journey has 2 stages. You have a progress update 1 and progress update 2. Knowing it clearly helps startup preparing projects that help them get there. And of course, what project and activity are your current priorities? And in that sense, you already see the work plan as a form for you to actually see where you need to be, what you need to do to actually get to a certain stage. I will be sending a Google document to the group chat very quickly where you can access and actually jot down your note in there. I will actually go around the Google document to also look at it as well. So each of you will actually go to a certain sheet in there to actually fill it in. And it is a share sheet, so make sure to go to the right sections of your of your team. Okay. So far, everyone clear with what's gonna happen in the next 10 minutes? Okay. Can I actually ask him a little bit, like what are we doing within the next 10 minutes? Kimron, are you here?
Sorry, Bong, the internet was unstable at the moment.
Understood. So I would like to tag.
Oh, okay. I'll be back the room in 10 minutes. Okay, start. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the room. It seems like everyone is actually making some progress in the documents. Thank you so much for filling it in. And I think some of you are actually have good crafts of where you are and where you need to be. And I think like this is a very good thing to actually see as well. And worry not, this particular document, we will reuse it again after the sessions. But after the session, I was actually expecting to see a clearer project with clearer goal, with clearer numbers, where exactly or what exactly number do you need to see to actually make sure you are progressing from state A to state B. So in a way, I'm going to share my screen again, but I want to actually emphasize on one thing. As many of the startup actually the key success to a startup is actually on the problem insight phase. Or in design thinking, we would consider that the define phase. Good businesses are actually surviving longer than others because they are addressing the right issue. So when you actually have clear definitions of the issue you are trying to address, businesses has higher chance of success in the market. The projects you do are addressed toward the right issues, therefore providing a lot of liability and accountability and credibility to your business partner. So in a way, worry not if your stage right now is in problem insights and ideating. I would rather see you guys doing a very good job defining the right issues to address with your business, rather than doing a lot of things that might not be helping you and setting you up for success. So it's very important to actually focus on this stage very clearly. And of course, after we actually identify the projects, we actually also identify the startup, also diagnose it a little bit as well. We are now going to actually looking at project and project management. So in this aspect is when you are looking at the do part. So as you already know why you're doing things, where you need to be, what you need to achieve, the next part is how to get there. Look at projects and project management as a tool on how exactly are you getting to a certain stage. And it's actually very important once you have a good direction to set, it's actually helpful for you to do the right projects that get you to a good stage as well. So when you actually look at project management, a project itself is very simple. It's a unique undertaking composed of interrelated activity which have well-defined beginning and end. Often involves staff from cross-functional group, and that operate under specific constraint of resources, schedule, and requirement. So in this set is that project usually has a beginning and end. Startup usually have longer lifespan, delivering hundreds of projects moving forward. But when you are deciding to lead a certain project in your startup, this means that you are currently doing a certain part of your businesses to actually hit a certain goal. And in that aspect, too, project management is actually a set of skill and method of planning, organizing, and managing a project from inception to its successful completion. So in a way, it's like two resources that you'll be applying to actually help you get from point A to point B, completing a project and using the project impact for a good sustainable business. And of course, when we look at projects management, the key element include goal, triple constraint, and project team. This is a very simple basic concept to begin a good project. So goal meaning that it must be clear and contribute to your startup. A lot of people has already familiar with the SMART goal, which I don't actually have to explain so clearly now, but I believe that SMART goal is actually something very essential for you to actually define first before starting taking actions. There's a concept called backward planning, where you're actually having a clear, definite directions before you're taking actions. You can actually think that I want 1,000 followers on Facebook, right? That can be one of the goals, but you need to actually understand you want 1,000 of good quality follower, right? What type of follower do you want? You can define it even further to get a very good goal to start your organization with, start your startup with. So in that sense, the activities that I'll be doing is creating posts, creating campaign, XYZ. So when you actually have a clear goal, you know that why you're doing campaign to get 1,000 good followers. Why are you actually creating posts? To actually help the campaign to get 1,000 followers. So the number, the goal itself has to be the center of your conversations. It's consider where you're actually looking at progress. So without good goal, you can't do good progress. You cannot update effectively. And you ended up talking a lot about process. So when you actually look at project, it's not about looking at the process itself, but looking at the progress and how it's delivered. Triple constraint is a simple concept of cost, time, and scope. So literally when you look at what you're planning to do, you need to actually look at resources. So the cost itself are not just money, but materials and other network are considered in that aspect too. Time, whether or not you allocated the right amounts of time. And of course, some things that is good to every startup owner to know is that how much hour of a week are you dedicating to the startup, right? Because I know that many of the startup are currently hosted by students and young professionals. So you actually have your life apart from that. Clear time, understanding, and allocation helps a lot. And of course, the scope is the size of the project you're planning to do. These three constraints will ultimately limit and set your project scope in a way that is deliverable. And of course, project team. Project team can sometimes involve everyone. Let's say your teammate, your startup has 5 members, but some project does not require all 5 members to be presented. Some other member would do other projects that would contribute to the startup as well. So from here, you can understand that sometimes a startup can launch 1 or 2 projects at the same time to actually hit a certain goal needed for the startup. So in a way, you need to understand clearly that which team member need to be on board with certain projects, while other team member need to actually on board with certain project to help as well. But let's actually talk about SMART goal. So when we're actually looking at SMART goal, we are currently looking at whether or not it can be specific enough. It needs to be described and understood clearly by everyone in your team. So in a way, if you're planning to actually describe your project goal, you need to be able to put it in word that is understandable by everyone. So it's either very clear, it's either very aligned. So as this is something that you can actually use to actually get people to come on board quickly. Measurable is the how itself on your in terms of how you track the progress. So 1,000 follower, for example. So how are you tracking 1,000? Are you tracking using Facebook Analytics? Are you tracking using just a specific generic number on Facebook? Or are you actually looking at post engagement, post reach, or certain other elements that in there that help tell you that you are getting that 1,000 good follower, and from which stage to which stage, right? And of course, the attainable part is where you're focusing on step-by-step process. You don't aim to get everything down in one go. You need to actually plan it very clearly that you know from which stage, which step that you need to take in order to get to 1,000. You cannot just start a Facebook in a day and expect 1,000, but you can actually start a Facebook in 3 weeks, but expecting a good campaign that can lead you to 1,000, for example. And of course, or as relevance, need to make sure that the goal of the projects are aligned with the startup goal, because that is very essential. Do not waste effort on things that are contributing to the progress of your startup, because a lot of projects are either too long, too big, or too irrelevant to your startup that sometimes you're actually investing time incorrectly. So talk to your coach very clearly and actually help you align, because one thing that coaches are for in this process too is to also look whether or not the activity you are doing are on track, supporting your work plan, and actually get used to a certain period. And of course, time is whether or not you actually have specific amount of time dedicated to it. Is it actually within this set of like schedule that is feasible? You don't expect to actually get large number within a short period of time. So when you actually look at a SMART goal, it enables you to actually look at alignment in a way that is very clear, and your teammate can actually also track the progress in that aspect too. And in a project, there's a life cycle. So you need to understand that most of you now are currently initiating projects. So you start becoming aware of your business need. So you're delivering a projects that help filling that need. You set goal of the projects that actually help contributing to the business goal, and you are creating mocha. A mocha is the format of like how you manage your team to actually work on certain projects. After initiating, you're looking at planning. So some of you are now looking at the planning phase where actually preparing what action to take in the progress moving forward. So in planning phase, you're actually looking at approved work plan, timeline, task list, and detailed role and responsibility and assessment method. So this is where you're looking at a project in a way that you already know what to do and continue on working on it as a team. While you're actually looking at executing and monitoring, is when you actually control actions and progress. You are actually looking at progress through updates, through check-in, and through team meeting. And you're looking at actions through observation. Sometimes it's very important to actually look at progress rather than action. Your teammate might have a specific method or way to do things that need to be experienced in the process. So allow a lot of freedom in the action or another the task type. But as long as you are able to agree on the progress, it is very easy to reflect and talk about it. Reason that I want to emphasize on this is that good projects is when everyone know the direction. Clear goal help you understand progress. Process is just how you do things, and people have different way of doing things. And it's important to trust your teammate to actually deliver the task they expected to do. If they cannot, they can actually communicate for help through actually helping you hit a certain progress. So this is something that you can actually practice as a team, how to do progress update in a way that is not process oriented, but goal oriented. Okay, and of course, when a project ends, it is essential to also close through small report, reflection, and reviews. And actually, sometimes you actually need to redo it again, or sometimes you actually would use those framework to actually do another good project moving forward. So this is the basic project management life cycle that you will go through throughout this whole process. So in a way, during the closing part is when you write the report for Sunisa. And this is where you need to send that slide that you were asked to deliver to Sunisa as well. So it's very, very essential for you to actually focus on progress. You already see Sunisa's slide as well. The key elements that is in there are goal, KPI, and progress. It's not about communicating the things that you do specifically, but it's the thing that you have achieved. So that's what we consider progress. We do not look at process as much as progress, because process are something that you can experience, you can learn, you can do, and you can actually utilize your skill and knowledges. But progress is where it truly matters. That's when we know, are you on the right track? Are you actually doing the right thing? And of course, with coaches, you're also going to actually communicate with them more on the progress part and consult with them on the process by asking their feedback on whether or not certain process is feasible, doable, or recommended, right? Coaches sometimes actually can give you good options on process, but it's up to you to decide whether or not what action you need to do to get a certain progress. Yes, and I think this life cycle helped you a lot in looking at like where your projects are and how certain things need to be delivered in certain state. It's actually developed awareness toward project management. When you have clear awareness, it's actually very easy to communicate to your team, because you can't expect people to go and start doing without having a clear alignment toward the planning, right? You cannot actually just start doing it immediately. That's why project management is a type of skill that we're going to talk a little bit that might help you in this particular process. And I will look at it in secret source perspective from stage 1 to stage 4. So when we look at the first thing, it's like identify clearly. The secret sauce number 1 is that you need to identify your startup state very clearly, your project goal very clearly, whether or not your project goal align or support your startup stage or help move your startup stage to a certain period. And then when you have a goal, you need to design assessment. How do I know I'm here? How do I know I have achieved it? How do I know exactly I doing the right thing? And of course, the last one is to also help your team be clear. Your team clarity equal good working progress, easy monitoring and process, good result. So it's always important to have good alignment meeting, good kick-off meeting that help as well. And of course, that's how we actually look at the secret sauce number 2, start off right. So it's very important to align the team member clearly with both goals and priorities. Goal is the project end achievement. So by the end of the project, you hit certain goal, you actually achieve certain thing. As for priority, is that this goal would align into your startup specifically. So in a way, you need to actually understand really priority mean this is what my business really needs. Goal mean this is what my project will deliver. And with that, you actually know that, oh, this goal means that we actually hitting a priority of our startup. So we are actually progressing our startup stage while doing a good project. And of course, host a kick-off meeting and conversation before the launch of any projects. Do not communicate just tasks without clearly having a kick-off meeting, because that is where a lot of teams fail to deliver good project. Make sure the kick-off meeting is when you communicate the goal and priority, but at the same time consult on the action and the task and role and responsibility. In other words, you align with people on what is the progress going to look like and consult and discuss with them on what is process, right? What are the key processes and how you can actually utilize certain processes, recommend or adjust certain processes to help you get to a progress needed. So in a way, progress and process going to be the two words you're going to hear me talking a lot, especially to my team, but literally to everyone as well, because a lot of people communicate process rather than progress. That's when teams to actually address the key achievement of projects. So it's very essential that you understand progress and process are two separate things, but need to be aligned at the beginning of every project. And of course, I love this book so much, even though it's actually for nonprofit, but I believe that it's actually applicable for young project managers. Because when you're managing project, you are managing a lot of things. You are managing timeline, you're managing progress. And I really encourage you guys to actually give this book a go, especially on the first few pages of the book, you already see good tools and resources. You can actually also work for private before too. So it's actually give me a lot of good tool, good description, and good languages to use, but at the same time, help me to align it clearly before taking action. So this is my secret sauce number 2, and I always think that this is the key sauce that actually help you succeed a lot. And of course, and number 3 is when we talk about progress versus process. Process can be experienced on and celebrated separately. So when your team delivers certain thing effectively or doing thing effectively, it's supposed to be celebrated because it's either contribute to a goal or it can be a separate discussion of like, oh, this is a good method that you should capture and do later. Process is how you do things. Repeat, process is how you do things. So when you actually have a clear way of doing things, it actually helps a lot. Progress, on the other hand, should be updated to inspire. So when you communicate progress to your team, you say, oh, today we hit 30% of our overall goal of 1,000 followers. So in a way, that means 300. So team are inspired. So in they have a higher increase. So we actually get 20 more percent, meaning you get to 500 follower in that process too. So it's actually very important for you to use progress update as a form of inspiration rather than the form of pressures. But at the same time, you can use progress as a way to communicate accountability. It's important to talk about progress in the form of like, are we on the right track? What seem to be the issues that why we are not hitting a certain goal? So progress, when both parties already understand where they need to be, it's easier to talk about accountability. Are we on the right track? Are we actually doing things correctly? Should we change the process to help getting the right progress that we need for the organization? And of course, last but not least, check your team frequently in terms of energy and well-being, because your team are human too. You guys are all excited, and I think like team progress can also be a celebrating of like individual achievement. Good highlight is like how you make your team feel inspired every single progress meeting. Do not make progress meeting boring. Progress meeting should be when you actually inspire and excited, but at the same time, also excited to solve problems together. If you actually succeed in making progress, that's where you celebrate. But if you were unable to actually hit a certain progress, that's where you problem solve together. This is why progress is actually very essential. And Sunisa has already have a good template for you to look at how to look at progress. So I feel like that is a very good tool moving forward. And of course, the fourth one, do not reinvent the wheel. By this, I actually mean that there's a lot of template out there that you can use to help you succeed as project managers. And it's always good to actually search for good sources of document template to use as a team. So how are you tracking your team? How are you actually do Gantt chart? How are you actually tracking budget? So I'm assuming Keenan has already sent you the budget tracking tool for your projects too, and also a project work plan that you can utilize. So all of those are tools. It's actually more important to understand the tool very clearly to use it efficiently rather than trying to make a new one. But if you master certain tool and you would like to adapt it to more of your content, feel free to do so, but discuss with your team. You cannot be just the only one knowing how to use it, because otherwise your team will be confused and not even sure what's going to happen. So make sure that the template they're using are communicate clearly that these are a few templates we'll be using, so everyone can actually familiar early on, rather than actually have a lot of confusion along the way. And yes, oh, sorry. And the last one is that powerful update is that a good progress update is not only data driven, but goal driven, but also a compelling narrative that inspires. I believe that this is something that you guys need to capture as well, in a way that whether or not what you learn is not always number driven, but can be some quotes that is so powerful or some reflection. I find a lot of CEOs write reflection a lot, and I recommend everyone, not just CEO, to do so too. Good reflection is when you understand that what are the key challenges in business and you try to overcome them. The story of overcoming certain challenges, fixing certain process to get a good progress are things that is compelling for a community of futurepreneurs. So I feel like it's actually very important for you to actually use this as a learning. Good reflection is always about whether or not you take away certain things from either success or failure and write it in a good way that should help communicate inspirations to your team. Because if you actually lead a startup and then tomorrow on you say, I'm not going to do it anymore, that means that you actually have not fully learned from that startup yet. Part of learning from startup is that, I did something wrong. I did not make good progress, but here's my reflection about it. That's what it means to have a good, compelling narrative that inspires. Do not always focus on success, focus on failures too, but in the ways that help people move forward. And it's not about breaking people down either. It's not saying, oh, this is bad, don't do it, never do it, you shouldn't do it, if you're going to be bad doing it. Sometimes people need to experience themselves, and then you help reflect with them to actually get good narrative and good learnings from that process. And I think powerful updates like this are things that is very essential for early stage startup, because this way you can capture the learning, truly capture the learning that will help you moving forward as an entrepreneur as well. Because you can't just look at numbers all the time and saying bad, good. 2 words is not enough. Bad, why? Good, why? What did you learn from good number? What did you learn from bad numbers that can be communicated to your team? And your team are encouraged to also share the very same things too. And of course, a few of the next steps that you already familiar as well is literally to look at some of these documents that Sunisa will be sharing with you as well. So I already aware that some of you have jotted down in the document. I see many of you are actually at ideation stage, or in other words, are trying to have idea, but are developing fully into an actions, while some are in problem insight, trying to actually understand a bit more about the beneficiary you are looking for. However, one thing that is essential too is that developing a good tracking system and good goal of those stage and phases as well. I can see just simple word in there, but I actually truly want to challenge you to think about numbers. How do you know enough? How do you know you're reaching the stage? Because sometimes you can ask hundreds of questions, but you never actually close a loop. Closing a loop meaning that you are satisfied with the responses or you are reaching a conclusion. Because if you do not close a project, you will never actually reaching the next stage of a certain process or a certain startup. Closing also means that you are concluding what you learn, analyze the information you receive through doing certain things, and actually using it as a collective business knowledge so that you're moving forward to a certain phase. So in this way, when you actually say developing new insight or researching about someone, what are you researching about? How do you know that you actually have the responses that you need? Right? Or if you actually want to do marketing, are you actually looking at good numbers? Are you looking at important numbers at the moment? And I will send you back to your group again, but this time I'll be dropping in for a quick group conversation, one-on-one from all group from 1 to 11, but 1 minute each. So in that sense, I'm actually hoping to actually help guide you through to not only identify some of the key stages of your business, but a key action that help you get from one stage to another. Because sometimes a good research project or good marketing campaign are essential, but literally let's see where is your head right now, where you're heading right now that actually need all of that. And of course, we will look at exactly the same questions from what we actually talked before. And I think this will take another 10 minutes before we are wrapping up to a Q&A session in a big group. So I think I would like to also ask the team to actually help send them back into group. Thank you, Sunisa and Monpen.
Okay, are you ready? Okay, I will count down. 1, 2, 3, start.
Favorite team number 4. But I would actually, I'm actually currently reviewing the worksheet you are currently doing, and I'm assuming many of you are currently in the research phase. I told this to many teams, and I think it's also might be beneficial for other teams too. If you are in early stage startup doing a research project, it's essential for you to identify key 3 in terms of solutions or in terms of actual issues of the community. Do not approach them at this early stage with the solution you try to test, because when you have a pre-assumed solutions and trying to test at the idea at the early stage of the research, it's going to be a bit difficult. Wait a bit more when you're doing prototype. That's when you're asking the questions about solutions. Is the solutions helping you? Is the solution preferable? So at this stage, do not focus about bringing the solution in, redefining clearly the current issues and needs for the community you are currently working for. And once again, apologize for unable to go to all group, because every time I went in, you guys was like on fire talking about different things and I don't want to cut, so I was like waiting a bit, and then some just go very long, and it's actually a very insightful conversations as well too. So I think with that in mind, I reached the end of the presentation overall for the project management, but feel free to reach out to me if you actually want to talk more on certain part of the projects. But hopefully you look at the work plan as a form of progress communication rather than process communications, because when you actually have a good work plan centered on progress, you can actually communicate impact effectively and sustainably through the process that will contribute to your overall startup. So thank you, team, for being here, and thank you, Sunisa, for arranging these wonderful sessions. Definitely, yes. I'm checking my email right now. So the floor is back to you, Sunisa.